Iron Banner and upcoming changes to the Enhancement Core Infusion system are the name of the game this week. What's going on, Guardians? My name is the Black Link, and today is March 21st, 2019, yet another Thursday. Which of course means we've got the Bungie Weekly Blog this week at Bungie. Now, there's only really two things to talk about this week. Like I said before, we've got Iron Banner coming up, so we'll cover that. We've got like a Double Valor week coming up. And of course, Bungie said that they were going to be making a statement about the Enhancement Core economy in the game. And let me just go ahead and prep you. It's absolutely nothing we haven't heard before. And I am none too pleased with that. I'm going to try to keep this from getting a little bit too ranty, but let's go ahead and dive on into this week's TWAB. Now, first things first, next week we have got the Iron Banner returning to Destiny 2. Starting on March 26th and going until April 2nd, the Iron Banner will be live. Additionally, it's also going to be a Double Valor week, so if you're looking to get your resets, trying to chase down that Recluse, this is going to be a great time to get some of that done. But it's not just the same old Iron Banner of old that we'll be getting. There have actually been a couple of big changes that we need to talk about. First up, Bungie is introducing 2 new consumable items that will change the flow of combat through temporary power level adjustments. Hold on to your seats, this is going to be a little bit crazy. Here's what they had to say. First up, we've got the Iron Burden. The Iron Burden consumable is for the best of the best to challenge themselves by voluntarily lowering their power by 100, putting more focus on skill, strategy, and gunplay. With greater risk comes greater reward. For the brave, Saladin will be offering the Iron Burden consumable for purchase with 5 Iron Banner tokens. There will also be a new triumph you can complete this season by defeating 500 opponents while the Iron Burden debuff is active. Completing it will reward you with an updated version of the Wizened Rebuke that is fully masterworked and has a curated role. And you don't have to complete it during this first event. Your progress will carry over to the next Iron Banners. Don't sweat getting the 500 kills while you're 100 underneath the maximum power. And I think that's an interesting change. It's a nice little addition for the hardcore players out there. Essentially giving yourself a pretty significant handicap with losing 100 light in order to get a fully masterworked weapon. The 500 kills is definitely a tall order, but we all just got done with Thorn, so I'm sure this will be a piece of cake for most of you veteran Guardians out there. But on the opposite side of things, we also have a brand new consumable titled the Wolf's Favor. For those of you who find yourselves in PvE activities more frequently, the Wolf's Favor consumable has been added as an invitation to try your hand in the Iron Banner. These consumables, which will drop with limited availability, grant a temporary 100 power increase, up to a cap of 700 for 30 minutes. Our goal here is to help those who don't normally play Crucible take a step into the action. And then we get a list of where exactly you can get the Wolf's Favor consumable to drop. It has a chance to drop from completing the following daily and weekly challenges: daily and heroic story missions, Vanguard strikes, Nightfalls, Flashpoints, Gambit, and the weekly milestones tied to Ikora and Hawthorne. So there, if you're somebody who's a little bit more shy when it comes to the Crucible, maybe you're somebody who really doesn't enjoy jumping into Iron Banner, this is meant for you to get a power level boost of 100 so that you're on a more even playing field. Not exactly sure how I feel about that on the whole. I guess it's kind of a good way to get certain people to try out PvP who normally wouldn't. But having that 100 more power still isn't going to give you much more of an advantage against a PvP sweat who knows what they're doing, even if they're down by 100 light. Either way, I'm willing to give things a shot. And the fact that the masterworked powerful reward is tied to the bounty where you lower your power, where you give yourself that handicap, I'm cool with that. Seems like it could be an interesting challenge. Now moving on, of course, we got to see some of this season's Iron Banner gear. And if you were to ask me, it kind of has a Sparrow Racing League sort of vibe to it. Neat. But we're also going to be getting access to a new Iron Banner emblem. This will be an emblem called the Weight of Guilt. You'll be able to pick it up after you complete all of Lord Saladin's weekly bounties. It will track higher power opponents defeated while under the effects of the Iron Burden. And they've also added a version of the Orwing's Maul Iron Banner grenade launcher with random rolls to the drop pool from Iron Banner as well. So quite a few new things going on with Iron Banner this time around. It'll certainly be interesting to see exactly how that new consumable system pans out. Looking forward to hearing the feedback on that. Alright, I hope you Guardians are ready because it's time for the Salt Cast. The next section of the TWAB that we're going to talk about is of course about the Enhancement Core economy. Now before we even get into this, you Guardians know my thoughts and opinions on the Enhancement Core economy. I think Enhancement Cores have no place in the overall Infusion formula. You'll remember back before Forsaken came out, they were called Masterwork Cores because they were meant to masterwork weapons and armor. And I always thought that adding them to the Infusion system created an unnecessary kind of extra time gate, keeping Guardians from using the gear that they want, and simply forcing them to use gear that might not be so great until they farmed enough of these silly cores. But we're going to go through everything that Bungie has to say about the Enhancement core economy. So let's go ahead and get into it. The goal of the Infusion system is to create an impactful feeling of progression when you increase the power of an item you enjoy using. An Infusion system with no scarcity around the materials would diminish this impact. I highly disagree with that statement. But continuing, to that end, we tapped into a material with inherent scarceness, Enhancement cores, to use as one of the keystone materials for this process. That is the goal of the Infusion system. But if the overall system is causing a negative experience, we want to work to improve it. We're constantly monitoring the Infusion economy to see what kind of impact it has on gear usage. We keep a close eye on the amount of Infusion materials being earned versus how many are being used, and will continue to make adjustments as needed. To that end, we'll be making a change in Season of Opulence with the goal of providing more access to Enhancement cores. Scrapper bounties previously dropped randomly when dismantling gear. There was no reliable way to earn Enhancement cores using these bounties, and we didn't feel they were providing enough materials. We will be deprecating these bounties at the start of Season 7. Note that any unfinished bounties still in your inventory when the new season begins can still be completed before their natural expiration. In their place, the gunsmith will now offer a selection of daily and weekly bounties that can be purchased for gunsmith materials. As with the scrapper bounties, each of these will include, among other things, an Enhancement core as a reward when completed. Our hope is that this increased access and control over Enhancement core acquisition will help improve the balance of materials being earned versus materials being used. As always, we'll be continuously monitoring this item's economy, along with your feedback to assess its effectiveness. And there we go. So that's Bungie. That's their dev team's official response to the Enhancement core economy. Now, if you remember, back in Destiny 2 Year 1, really kind of before Warmind, I want to say, Infusion simply cost like legendary shards and glimmer. And then when Warmind came out during that summer, right before Forsaken, they added in planetary materials as part of the Infusion system. I thought that was perfect. Planetary materials have sources where you can go and either farm them up or purchase them with currencies that are already in-game. They had a meaningful grind already attached to them because just doing content on any planet will get you planetary materials. And I thought it was more than fair enough for the Infusion system. Of course, with Forsaken, they added Masterwork cores to that equation, and then eventually, after we complained about them adding Masterwork cores to that Infusion system, they changed the name of Masterwork cores. In my opinion, really sidestepping the problem there. Now, I've ranted about this no less than maybe 15,000 times in 15,000 different videos. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time here, other than saying I disagree with this wholeheartedly. They state as part of their reasoning here that they want the Infusion system to have an impactful feeling of progression, and that an Infusion system with no scarcity around the materials would diminish this impact. Which is something they've mentioned before. They say they want Infusion to be a meaningful experience, and Enhancement cores being a part of that equation because of their scarcity is meant to make that experience more meaningful. I would argue the opposite direction. It does not make Infusion more meaningful, it makes it a hassle. The thing that makes Infusion meaningful is me taking the gear that I love. Whether it's my Midnight Coup from the Leviathan or my perfectly rolled Retold Tale, it's taking that gear that I enjoy using, the gear that I've chosen to align with my character, and bringing it up to max level so I can use it in in-game content both in PvE and PvP. And this flies directly in the face of that. Enhancement cores don't make anything more impactful. They don't make anything more meaningful. It doesn't stop the progression of power. You still have powerful gear. It's just going to be, a crappy piece of Dreaming City gear that has none of the perks that you want, that you're forced to wear in Reckoning Tier 3 because the actual gear set that you've built up, that you've curated, that you've masterworked, can't be used because you don't have the Enhancement cores to bring it up to snuff. When it comes to this system with Enhancement cores, and I promise I'm done after this, or rather I guess I should say the system of Infusion, that is supposed to be something meaningful. I can understand and agree with that, Bungie. But what makes the Infusion system meaningful is the fact that I can take the gear that I want to use, that gear that I grinded for, that perfectly built set of armor that goes perfectly with the weapons that I like to use, and bring that up to the level of content that I'm running again in both PvE and PvP. And the Enhancement core situation really just, in my opinion, gets in the way of that. And of course people will say, well, you can go farm Enhancement cores. Yes, you can. That is true. And when it comes to this change in bounties, I like the scrapper bounties. I do think that there needed to be a more reliable way to get them, so I'm okay with them taking them over to Banshee. Although I think that creates another issue there with them costing gunsmith materials rather than something like Glimmer, since there are already a lot of other sinks for gunsmith materials in the game right now between Ada and the mods that she sells versus the mods that Banshee sells. Plus the fact with how many gunsmith materials it takes to turn in for a package with Banshee. That might be a little bit of an issue, so I would like to see them change that over to Glimmer. But yeah, okay, yes, there are ways to grind enhancement cores. It's not a meaningful grind. It's not a fun grind to go out there, pop Finest Matter Weave, and just kill things until you get enhancement cores. But yes, it is there and it's easy. It's not hard to do. But just because you're willing to put up with a bad system doesn't mean that bad system is suddenly good. And I would argue that rather than looking at the amount of infusions that are happening versus the amount of enhancement cores people are earning as their justification for this entire change with the enhancement core system, that they would look at the number of weapons and armor being masterworked. I don't know about you, Guardians, but I haven't masterworked, like fully masterworked anything since Warmine. Which is kind of sad and hilarious since that was the entire point behind the enhancement cores, which were previously known as masterwork cores. I'd love to see Bungie take a peek at those numbers and get back to us on that. But anyways, that is it for my rant. I'm sorry for going off on a tangent there. I do have a whole video talking about enhancement cores. I'll leave a link to that down in the description box below if you want to go and check it out. But that's it for this week's TWAB. That's the biggest bits of news we've got coming in the future. Season of Opulence is when all these enhancement core changes are going to be going into effect. But those are my thoughts, Guardians. Be sure to leave me yours down in the comment section below. How do you feel about the enhancement core system? Are you one of the Guardians who has plenty of them? Do you run tons of content, pop those Finest Matter Weaves, and get them all the time? Or are you one of the Guardians who could see them go away? I can't wait to read you guys' responses to this one down in the comment section below. That's it for this video. Thank you, Guardians, so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, feel free to drop a like. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. But I'm out for now. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, I am the Black Link. You Guardians stay frosty.